we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation, which is based loosely on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app, and I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what the podcast is all about. The paywalls are gone. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and I'm pleased to welcome the guest today, Scott Walker. Scott, how are you?
I'm great. I'm great, Doug. How are you? Thanks for having me back.
I'm doing great. I was going to say I normally introduce Scott as an author, and he still is. He has many books out, but he's got some interesting things to talk about today. Along with that, Scott was the last, I'll say, audio podcast that we did, around episode 50. And after that, I said, oh, Scott, we're going to have you back on again. Well, we're 40 episodes past that. It tells me how slow I work in trying to get this. But this is the first time in video, Scott. So welcome.
Yeah.
Lots of things going on, I think, all over the place. And nothing like getting right into it. So what's going on? You got some new things kind of happening, or shall I say a new phase you're going into? Is that a...
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I was when we last chatted. My guess would be I was looking at making a full-time pivot into the cozy fantasy writing space.
And before we get too far into this, you have a number of books out. So your first book, not your first, most recent book, what's it called? And just so we get it out there before we get into our discussion.
I published 2 books in December. One was a novel that I wrote, which was the 4th and final installment in a cozy urban fantasy series called Manhattan Magic.
Yes.
That book was called Fae and Fate. And a couple of days later, the Cozy Veils Shared World project that I started published its 3rd anthology, Winter Tales from Cozy Veils #2. And I haven't published anything since, which we'll get into in a second. But, again, backing things up, I think when we last chatted, I was wrapping up a lot of my urban fantasy books with the plan to come January 1 of 2025, be fully focused on this shared world of cozy fantasy that we call Cozy Veils.
Right.
And that did happen. I hit January 1 and was like, great, all of my urban fantasy series and books are done. And I can now focus fully on Cozy Veils. I can write the next novel in my series. I have a series in Cozy Veils called it's Appleton series. Appleton. Book 1 was published in September of last year. And my goal was like, okay, great. I can like crank out these novels in the shared world in my series here. And that didn't happen for several reasons that were percolating in the background last year. So even when you and I last chatted, I was struggling with writing. I was creatively burned out in retrospect. Crisis of confidence, writer's block.
Interesting.
Existential, like, why am I still doing this 5 years later, 6 years later, when I haven't been able to hit the goals that I'd set for myself? And so January hit, we had the fires in LA. We were in the middle between both fires, although close enough to the Altadena fire that the smoke infiltrated our house. Ash came into our house. And while we weren't at risk of losing our house, we had to bug out for a couple of days because the air quality was so bad. I had a unexpected family death at the end of January. And I think I hit February realizing that I could not continue writing, that it was the act of writing no longer brought me joy. I was not able to find happiness like I used
Yeah.
to sit down and writing novels. The idea of trying to write book 2 for my Cozy Vales series was very, very unappealing. And I think I realized I kind of hit like an endpoint in terms of like, this is no longer working for me creatively. It doesn't satisfy my soul, and I
Oh
need to
my
do something
goodness.
different.
So you
So,
you gave no indication in our last discussion on that at all. And
to be fair, Doug, I don't think I realized it back then. I think my thought last year was I've got too much going on. I'm writing urban fantasy series, cozy fantasy. I'm managing this shared world project. I'm trying to also write 2 different worlds, wrap things up. I had deadlines and pre-orders I had to meet. And I just presumed that I was just working too fast, and all I needed to do was slow down. And once I
okay.
was able to focus on Cozy Vales, everything would get better. But
And
ironically, like the more things that took off my plate, the more boxes that I checked, the more I realized that the problem was far more fundamental than that. That I really had not just burned out in terms of working so hard for so long,
yes.
but I had burned out on writing insofar as it really took me a long time to realize why was I so reluctant to sit down and plot a novel, write the novel? Why wasn't I anxious to get to the keyboard? I used to love writing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
It literally filled my soul. And I had to admit to myself in February that, dude, like this, it wasn't a temporary burnout. Like writing, I mean, it may be. I might go back to writing. Like everything is there, everything's waiting for me. I can easily jump back into it whenever I want
Yeah.
to. The systems are in place, the platforms are there. But I just had to admit to myself that it was no longer enjoyable. And if it's no longer enjoyable and it's not meeting my goals, life's short, man. I got to do something else. I got to find something that's more happy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no. I mean that's a for sure. Because you, when we last talked, and I would like to talk to you even more regularly, but you were doing a seminar um, that you were going to put on in LA with an author connection, and you were the keynote or something to that effect. You were on the. I think actually it was going to be online, if I
Yeah,
remember
it was.
correctly.
I did a virtual seminar in September talking about creating, managing, and writing in fiction
Yes,
shared worlds. Yeah.
and so you were living that what you were
Yeah.
going to talk about.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, so like, to be clear, that project's still ongoing. I did write a short story for our next anthology. It got submitted last month for our
Oh wow.
collaborative continuity review. And I've got 1 or 2 more stories left to read for that from a continuity perspective. Our next anthology comes out in September. It's called Autumn Tales from Cozy Vales. I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be our biggest anthology in terms of sheer number of short stories. We brought a
Okay.
new wave of authors on late last year, and several of them have written stories for the upcoming anthology. So that's not stopping, and I do enjoy that because there's a community aspect to
Right.
it. There's a collaboration, a co-creation, all the things that I do love that are missing when I'm just writing by myself
Yep.
in my own world with this one novel or this one series, and I'm not able to talk to anyone else or
I hear
co-create.
you.
Like I really love getting proposals from other scribes for new settings, new people, new things, new events in Cozy Vales, and then we kick around the idea internally on our Discord server, and usually something changes. There's some elevation in the proposal from the original vision
Right.
into something that's even better, but would not have been reached if there wasn't that communal contribution, right?
Yes.
And so, together's better, and different diverse voices bring different attitudes and different perspectives. And so, as we build this world out slowly, and we do every single month, something gets proposed. I love that process, right? And I love
Yep.
I've got a monthly catch up call with the scribes coming up in a couple of days. We'll hop on a Zoom call for about 45 minutes, catch up with each other, do some quick updates on the group, and figure out what the next steps should be. But the real appeal is like seeing a lot of these people face to face, hearing what they've been
Oh
up
yeah.
to, Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
it's the, I think I realized that the isolation
yeah.
of writing, uh, just it just wasn't doing it for me. So I'm looking to do something that is more community based. I'm
Yep.
exploring. I'm at a kind of a blank canvas. Like I'm not exactly sure what I want to do next, but I do know that I'm not going to repeat the same mistakes I made with
Mm,
writing, which was I need to be part of a community, whether that's leading a community or
right.
just an active member. And to the extent that I can scratch my creative itch,
Yes.
creativity for me has been for the last 5 or 6 years just writing fiction. But
Yep.
before that, I was designing immersive experiences. I was
Yep.
doing the equivalent of LARPs. I was running D&D tabletop games, designing the adventures, hosting the
That's a
sessions,
lot.
and
That's a
leading the
lot.
players through all the stuff. I've done a lot of different creative stuff over the last several decades, and I miss a lot of that. And
Yes.
so I guess as I'm pivoting into this next chapter of my life and staring down 60, which is getting very, very close,
It's
uh,
okay.
it is totally fine. It's totally fine. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that, my runway is getting shorter and I have a lot of things that I want to do. So I have to
Oh
be
my God.
very, very conscious about where I spend my time, where I spend my energy, and make sure that I'm getting the most out of what I want as fast as possible because
Sure.
I'm not 22 anymore, right? You and I aren't for sure.
I will tell you something, Scott, and I'm not pushing smoke up, but you do not look like you're hedging the
I
number you
know,
said, 60. Like that.
I
That's
know.
just. I mean, I'm going to hear people saying, What is he talking about?"
Yes, it is true. I'm 58, so I don't
Oh
look
my
it.
goodness,
I don't
man!
look it. I won the genetic lottery in that respect. I can't. I wish I could attribute it to some lifestyle that I've chosen, and I could share the secret with you, Doug. I really wish I could, but there's no secret. It's just luck. So,
You're going to be doing the next Netflix series on how to be immortal. Like, oh, that's crazy. Well, I was gonna say, like Scott, it's amazing when you say what you just told me because have you heard of the series Alone? It's
I
a
don't.
it's a it's a
Uh,
series where and it's called Alone.
okay.
And it started, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And the concept is they take 10 contestants and they drop them in some super isolated part, often
Mm,
in Canada, northern
okay.
Canada, Alaska. And the whole goal is, and they're by themselves. The 10
Gotcha.
people cannot see each other. They're alone. And the winner is the person that can stand that the longest. They
Okay.
get they get to take 10 things with them, like a saw and a bow and arrow and various things. They have to build their own huts or whatever. And these are like in pretty crazy spots. So my wife saw it and she says, "Oh, that looks interesting." And I didn't want to watch it at all. I was like, are you kidding? Like, what is this? Well, I'll tell you, who got so into it because, and it's kind of how you're describing what's happened
Mm,
is this isolation. You're watching Navy SEALs trained people after 30 days, literally weeping because they can't see their kids and their wife and having to tap out. And it's really when you think about it, I mean, what's the worst imprisonment? When you do something wrong in prison, where do they put you? In solitary confinement, right? I'm not saying I know that from experience, by the way. This is my movie knowledge, but it's like, and this is part of what got me started in this whole podcast thing, and from even the writing thing was I can't believe how much we need one another.
mm,
Like I'm exceedingly blown away by it. Like I think we need each other more than we have any even idea of. So, and I
yeah.
think when you describe what you said, like you love the community, you're like such a collaborator in your writing. Like I'm going, like how do you do this by yourself? Like you know how everybody gets this idea, like it's nice. There's a nice running stream. It's a beautiful log cabin. All you see is nature around you. That's where I want to write. And it's like, nope.
Well, I think one of the first wake up calls was January when some fellow writer made the comment to the effect, if I don't write at least a few hundred words a day, that's a bad day. Like I
Yep.
literally need to write to be happy. And I was like, I have gone weeks without writing and been totally happy. Maybe I should look into that a little bit more. And
Interesting.
that's when
Interesting.
I peeled back the layers and realized that that satisfaction and joy that I got, the learning curve and the exploration and building new worlds and creating new characters, all of that, just the appeal for some reason last year just kind of slowly went away. I think I've been going to this same creative well and drawing water from it for
Yep.
years
Mm.
and not realizing until it was too late that one well wasn't enough. I needed multiple creative wells. I needed
Interesting.
ways
Yep.
to express my creativity beyond just prose fiction. And starting the shared world was maybe one way to try to get back to that
Yep.
communal collaboration thing that I missed. But it also was at the end of the day, it's still just fiction prose. There was nothing else to it that I was able to take advantage of and express different forms of creativity. And one of the things that I've been doing the last couple of months is looking at this filter, right? For whatever I do next, like there has to be some kind of community aspect to it. B,
Yes.
ideally, some kind of collaborative, co-creative element to it. C, I need to be able to have a lot of flexibility in how I express my creativity, whether that's designing experiences, hosting some kind of a live event or activity, building a fictional world that's kind of a meta world that people experience in different ways, online, offline, etc. Those three things are like rising to the surface. And then separate from that is the research that I've done into kind of where we are as a society.
Oh my.
And I've read a lot of books about the disconnectedness, the increasing mental health crisis we're having, the effects of zoning laws and technology on what they call the elimination of third spaces in our physical space. So first space is home, second space is work. Third space, the great example would be Cheers, right? Some bar, some coffee, some restaurant,
Absolutely.
some place you hang out at. And
And
when
everybody knows you.
everybody knows you, everybody's glad to see you.
That's awesome.
But the important thing is you can hang out for an extended period of time. And as these mom and pop shops began to be replaced by these chains, where the chains are operating at a turnover, maximize revenue and profit, they're not going to maximize that if you're sitting down at a table for 3 hours at a time. And so I'm not in any way, shape, or form knocking chains or retail establishments. But the reality is that when you no longer have an easy place to go to hang out, to meet other people for extended periods of time, that plus the fact that you can order everything online, you don't have to go to a store to buy something to have it delivered to your house.
Yep.
We're
Oh
increasingly cocooning ourselves and stepping back from that friction of human interaction. So what that means is that we're less likely to want to do it.
Yep.
We're going to be worse at it when we do it, which is going to reinforce the desire to retreat even more. And I feel like communities and connectedness are needed more than ever.
So, oh my goodness, you couldn't say that louder. Or loud enough.
If there's a focus, I can say that I'm probably looking at a Venn diagram where I can do all the creative things that I want to do, but in my heart, like I know that this is actually making the world a better place. And as I don't know about you, I'm presuming it's true. The older I get, the more that I want to make sure that what I'm doing has some kind of a not necessarily philanthropic, but I can say for sure, this is objectively making the world a better place. I'm making people happier, or I'm increasing their satisfaction and life. That to me is where I'm looking, and what that's going to end up ultimately being, I don't know. I'll keep you informed. But
no, that's cool. Like when I'm listening to you, because you're a storyteller, and I'm thinking, man, here's a director in the work. But when you've mentioned so many things here, Scott, and to me, those are the things like, so we're going to take this topic and I'm going to bring this topic back to you
Cool.
much sooner because
Okay.
I want to know where you're going, like as far as how that's kind of morphs itself or evolves with you, because I think, well, as I said, we need each other more than I had any idea of. I mean, when I worked in the corporate world, I didn't have to struggle with that because
No.
they're everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You're going, I don't need another meeting. Like your whole day was meeting to meeting to meeting. Yes, you needed a break, but you didn't realize you needed that. Like I think we're in such a desperate situation that we'll create conflict with people just to have connection with them. And
Yeah.
we're not even aware of that. Like
Yeah.
it's so weird. And technology's only exacerbating that, right? It's just like to your point. And I don't think the pandemic helped this at all, but I know it didn't. But it gets harder and harder to go out.
I think the pandemic accelerated what was already in motion in
No
some
question.
ways.
Yes, no
Yeah.
question.
And so a lot of companies pivoted in response to that of, gosh, I mean, what do we do when we can't service people in person in our space when literally the doors are locked? And that generated, I think, some very creative responses on companies' parts to survive through other
Mhm.
means.
Yep.
But that also accelerated this path that we're on in terms of this, whether it's self-intentionally done or not, we're getting more and more isolated. And
No question about it.
for guys, it's even worse. Like I talk to my wife all the
Yep.
time, and she's having breakfast and lunch and coffee and drinks with her friends, and they're chatting about stuff.
Yes.
When guys, if they get together, if we get together, it's
Yeah.
typically very superficial. It is not about our kids. It's not about our work. It's not about it's the latest sports game, or
Yep.
maybe a movie, or maybe a book. But we are reluctant to be open and honest in ways that I feel like women are naturally wired to be, which is why there's such a disparity
Yes.
in mental health as you get
Mhm.
older between men and women. It's why I feel like men tend to die earlier, and why men don't have as many close friends as women do. And all
It's
the studies show that we're literally killing ourselves in some ways, guys. And so
it's so true. I mean, you go even at the opposite end of the scale with young men and what we've gone through over the last 10 years.
yeah,
Like there's nothing for young men. Like there's just been like completely forgotten. Like they're just and it's like they need something. I mean, up here, and you probably hear this a little bit, Jordan Peterson talks a lot to young men because of the fact that they're being forgotten, right? We're coming
yeah,
from a community where we're supposed to be in charge, right? Like not
yeah,
a community, but I'll call it an evolution, or how how the family units to comes together. They're supposed to be responsible, right? You're supposed to be the one that's trying to bring home the bacon, so to speak. There's a responsibility there that you're supposed to do without complaint,
yeah,
and and that's what you're supposed to be, right? And now we're in a world where, well, that doesn't matter. Like, well, it does
yeah.
still matter, by the way, in a big way. But
It,
it's so interesting when you bring this up, and I can see how it impacts. Like this is part of what even started Better Than Not, because I was starting to realize was through my agent, and he says, "Well, you can talk to anybody," and I'm kind of
yeah.
like, "No way, you're making me." That's just hilarious. He says, "You're the only guy I can't get off the phone with in less than 15 minutes," and I said, "So you say I talk a lot?" But it's and to your point about like one of the things I had to start to realize for myself was I've got to make a point to go out and meet people. Now, part of it, we moved to the West Coast. So we had kind of a double thing going on, right? Because even the friends that I did have didn't have them anymore. But I was writing. Like, that's the whole thing. And so it was like you had to be, like, when you say cheers, when you bring cheers up, like, I just like, it's such cool when you find a restaurant that you can go to and people say, "Hey, Doug," or "Hey, Scott." And you like, there's just something magical that happens, right? You're like, you feel comfortable, open, safe even. And so it's like, it's so interesting that how this has impacted you. Like, it's kind of a crazy thing. So what kind of books are you reading around, or things that you're that's reinforcing this and making it more of a, like, it's not, I'm not imagining this. This is real. Like what?
Yeah, there's articles online and books that I've read, and I've even talked to some other people too, who are like, it's covering topics from everything as general as how to be happier,
Yes.
versus happy. By the way, like that's a
Yes.
very important distinction. Happier is attainable and something you can actually achieve. Being eternally happy is not. It's just
Correct.
how we're wired.
Right
And
on.
so as
Right.
soon as you say, I'm going to be happy, you've already failed, right? So
Well, I love that statement.
there's a book called, I think it's called Build the Life You Want.
Hmm.
And it's by ostensibly a business school professor who's really gone hardcore down this, like, how do I be happier as a person path. And his research has led him to write this book. And he looks at the research and kind of implodes a lot of assumptions that we have about
Yes.
what it means to be happy, what really does make us happy, and how do we deal with all the challenges that we have today that you and I didn't have in the 70s or the 80s.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
the younger generations, I do feel for the younger generations. They're facing a series of challenges you and I did not face at that age.
For
And
sure.
I can't imagine, it's got to be incredibly difficult to grow up in this world facing those challenges. So that was one book that kind of began that journey of like, there's something here. And he would touch on things like connection. He would touch on things like authentic connection.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then he, like I said, blew up a lot of common conceptions about happiness. And then I began to look at community. So there is, uh, let's see, I think I've got them behind me on the bookcase. There is The Art of Community,
Oh, cool.
The Business of Belonging. There's a book called Get Together. There's a book called Finding Your Third Place.
Oh man.
And there's one or two more that I've read, and together the themes were very, very similar. They came at it from slightly different angles, but the bottom line was, we have a crisis on our hands, and it's systemic. There are
Oh,
multiple reasons, multiple forces that have pushed us to where we are. And
yep.
while most people do not want to be disconnected and do not want to be lonely, they don't know how not to be, because it's not a simple
Yeah.
thing of, well, all I have to do is get out of my house and do XYZ. There are a lot of systemic forces pushing against you, keeping you isolated, making it easier not to have
Yep.
that interaction with other people. And so,
That's such a good point. Oh my goodness.
yeah, I mean, it's depressing on one hand, but knowing what those forces are then allows us to begin constructing solutions or
Hmm.
responses to those. And even at an individual level, say you still have some autonomy, some agency here. Yes, you
Yes.
might not have the same number of third places you could have gone to 40 years ago, but there are still some. You can create your own. Like there are ways to get over this.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, like, this is one of the reasons why I started inviting people out to go for coffee.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened out of here. Now, what's really interesting, and I think this is a guy thing, but many of us wait for the phone to ring.
Yeah.
And I found that if I wait for the phone to ring, it's never ringing, because all the other guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I can't believe how, when I started to pick the phone up, how many people were like, yeah, let's go for coffee. Like, it wasn't even like, no, I'm not going for coffee with you, or like, I don't have time. It was like immediate.
Yeah.
So now I'm in the fort where, like, I could go for coffee every day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, to me, what the podcast is kind of in a way like. That's why I like doing them in person, because the vibe is, technology allows this to happen. You can be in Los Angeles and I'm in Abbotsford, BC, and we can have this kind of a conversation.
Mhm.
But the realness of it like as far as person to person, is kind of missing. But I think there's a lot of audio and even visual through the video that you do get that's better than not doing it.
Yeah.
Hence
I
the
mean,
title.
yeah, there's a whole lot of research about, well, there's one thing in particular where they said when we have Zoom cameras off and you're not looking at a person, and the presumption is that this is true digitally as well as it is physically. So in
Right.
real life, if we're sitting and I lean forward and I'm looking straight into your eyes, we have this weird unconscious physiological reaction that makes us
Yep.
more receptive to
Yep.
hearing the other person, makes us more willing to hear that other
Mm-hmm.
person. And when you don't, those walls start to come up. And so I'm on these Zoom calls and a lot of people, cameras off. And I get that. A lot of people are shy. A lot of people are introverted or have various reasons for not wanting
Sure.
to be on the camera.
Absolutely.
But like, and it's a poor stand-in for the physical, authentic connection, sitting
No
down,
question.
actually sharing a coffee. Like this is awesome that we can do this remotely, right? But it
Yep.
would be even better if we could actually sit down at the same table,
And it
occupy the
is.
same physical space.
It
But
is.
that kind of stuff where I'm like, it's those small things, I think, where cameras off, where you might be looking at the speaker, but the speaker isn't able to look at
Yes.
you. It's those kind of really interesting dynamics that we as humans have, and we're not even aware of it. We aren't even aware that we are reacting that way at such a low level
It is.
physiological chemical basis,
It's
and yet it has a
crazy.
direct impact on what we consciously feel about the
Yep.
person across from us. Do I like what they're saying? Am I receptive to it? Am I already like thinking about what's happening after the
Yep.
coffee? Like,
Yep.
it's wild. It's wild.
It is. It is so. We have so much that goes on that we're unaware of. Even though we like to think we're all in control of it all, right?
Yeah.
That's why, like the podcast is an example, right? Here's you're talking to two people, right, and to each other, and after the few minutes, because we all have this thing that we have this way that we want to present ourselves to the world. We don't even know really, like we dress up and things like that. But then you get into this conversation and you forget all that. And then suddenly we start revealing ourselves that we don't even know we're revealing. That's, I think, both healthy for the person talking as well as the person listening, and vice versa, because it's a conversation, right? But one of the things that I think is really big, Scott, in this is our transactional world, because everything we do is transactional by and large, right? And it's like, and this is where I found it actually in my father, is that you see these things go on is, well, I can't really sit down and have a coffee with you because I've got nothing to provide you. I've got
Mm.
nothing. Why would you want to sit down with me? Because my expertise that I had is no longer. It's not relevant, right? My work is 30 years ago. Now look at what's happened in 30 years, right? You listen to all the music you want to on your phone in seconds, right? And so that's gone. So that's a different demographic than us, but it's that transactional part. And you kind of feel it. Well, you took us out for dinner, so now we have to take you out for dinner. Do you know what I mean? Like it's that kind of thing. And our business is like that. Like if I can't offer you something for value, why are you interested?
It's wild that you mentioned that, because that's a really, really important, insightful, I think, realization. One of the books that I read, I'm pretty sure it was Build the Life That You Want. There's a section where the author talks about the value of useless friends. And the whole conceit, the whole concept is, I want to hang out with you literally because, not because there's something I can get from you. There's nothing you can give me. I just want to be with you just to be with you, just to share your company, because I enjoy being around you. And so we have transactional friends, and he actually uses that term. We have transactional friends, which we have a lot of in our life typically.
Yeah.
But then the most important ones are the ones that are useless, where they literally can't necessarily do anything for it. They're not going to help us get a job. They're not necessarily going to help us get a promotion. They're
Yep.
not going to put money in our bank account, but they still provide a huge, wildly important value in our life. They
Mm-hmm.
give us that connection. that you know is genuine because it's not transactional. So that's a huge insight, Doug.
Well, I mean, this has come to me just through personal experience, but another, to your point here, Samuel Johnson has this quote that you can tell the true character of an individual by how he treats someone who can do absolutely nothing for him. And it's like, that's almost like a quote to live by for me, because it's like, we're in my business world, you never did that. Like, it was always like, if I can get this deal done or this contract signed or whatever that, and I don't like to admit it,
Mm,
but that that was what you were. How do I say it? You were encouraged. That was what you were paid for in essence, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So
And the other thing too is, again, going back to the systemic forces, like there's a lot of reasons why in the business world we tend to take that mindset.
absolutely, yeah.
The good news, because I don't want to be all doom and gloom. Like the good news though is that you only need 1 to 3 really good close friends.
Yep.
Like I think one of the things that social media and technology has done is given this appearance that you can have hundreds, thousands of friends,
Yes.
acquaintances.
Yes.
And the reality is, and I keep reading this in book after book after book, the number of meaningful relationships you can actually sustain at any one time is topping out at around 100, right? And that's just all kinds of connections, whether they're
Yes.
acquaintances, colleagues, friends, family,
Mhm.
spouses, whatever. And so there's these concentric circles that start to get close. And at the very center, the ones that the relationships that are the most important to you, you only need a couple of really close friends,
Mhm.
outside of your spouse. You only need a couple of close friends to really have a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so in that way, it's actually not that hard, right? It's just making that effort like you. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going
You
to call
have
this person. I'm going to invite him to coffee.
there has to be an
And for
intention there.
no other reason other than just to hang out and catch up.
Right on. Like, why do you want to talk to me?
Well, tell me about that experience. What have you taken away from that? Any insights, revelations you had from this? And how long have you been doing this?
Really, since I started it when I left the corporate world, because one of
Okay.
the things that I did realize, I didn't know what I was doing actually, but I just knew that I couldn't be alone all the time writing. Like, I
Mm,
was kind of aware of that. So kind of started. But when we moved out here, that's because we didn't know anyone, right? And I mean, you also realize you can't spend all your time with your spouse. Like, it's
right.
just, I mean, you hope that you have this connection that allows you to do all that stuff, but and they're like, my wife is my best friend. That's just part of it. But um you need these externals. And so what I call them externals. That doesn't sound very how shall we say, um, sensitive, but just those relationships and what you learn from them and what people are. And I'm also extremely curious. So like that's the fun part of it. Um, and I've taken just like I just can't believe how much difference I feel even after I've had a coffee with somebody for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Like it's just, and it's not like checklist. We talked this. It's just like whatever you want to talk about, from Iron Maiden to Top Gun. Like it's just like it's so fascinating, different people's interests. It's one of the things too, Scott, that what will school become? Because I kind of grew up with everything was about curriculum. Like everything was about what you were going to study. And I'm really starting. I've talked to actually a doctor on this, Dr. Sophie Redline. I had her on the podcast because she was dealing with people doing exploration, explorers who have big, well, we'll term it as mental illness, but they're out of the environment of society for so long that they have a hard time coming back.
Mm,
So these are extremes, right? But in essence, is exactly what you're talking about being in your house, right? It's like a smaller extreme, but you haven't been out of your house in 3 days. Like
yeah.
that wouldn't be that odd a thing for, I think, many people.
Agreed. Agreed. And then,
And
work is maybe the one thing that's getting you out of the house the
absolutely,
most.
absolutely. And
Uh,
look at what they're bringing everybody back to work, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. It's interesting. So anyway, they were talking about school. So I was definitely interested in curriculum. Well, today, if you have a phone, you have an answer for everything. At literally, you can even talk it into your phone today, right?
Yeah.
Like, who discovered Canada? Like, whatever you want to know. How old was Paul Newman when he died? We don't have to have that in a learning environment in school. But what we are missing, beginning to see happening in school, is there's no social skills.
Yeah.
They don't know how to talk to one another, apparently. And what's so funny about this, ironic in many ways, is I used to think that was the stupidest part of school, the social part. Like I had friends, but I'm at school not to have friends. I'm at school to learn. And that's one of the 180s that has completely turned on me. Is like it's just
So I think based on my admittedly limited research, a lot of if you go back to the 50s and the 60s and to a certain extent even the
mhm.
70s, I'm definitely a Gen Xer. I'm like early on. So I was one of like I'm on the bubble by just like a year or two. I'm almost a boomer, but I'm technically a Gen Xer. And we were the latchkey kids, right? The first generation where we're coming home from school to an empty house because we've got
Yep, mom
dinks,
and dad are
got
working.
dual income,
Yep, absolutely.
not dinks technically, but dual income working parents, and that there were a lot of things in our culture and society that would reinforce those kinds of social aspects where we're forced to go out. We might be forced to go to the
Yeah,
school dance. We might be forced to take, oh God forbid, dancing lessons, cotillion. You're going to the local YMCA swimming pool. You're going on camping trips
yep,
with your family. Like you're being forced to interact not just with your family but with your friends. I
yep.
mean, I couldn't wait to go to the roller skating rink in middle school or get
There you
dropped
go.
off at the
Yeah,
mall to go see a movie, to
absolutely.
have that freedom and to
Yep.
walk around with my friends or my girlfriend or whatever. And like I'm watching my kids grow up, and I'm like, "Don't you guys want to go out?" Well, I mean, they hold up their phone, like, I mean, we're FaceTiming. I'm like, but you could be like together at a bookstore, at a coffee shop, and as
Or a
they've gotten
movie.
older, they're starting to do more of that. But when they were younger, my wife and I are like, we couldn't wait to get our driver's license. We couldn't wait to get our
Oh,
car and our
absolutely.
freedom. And the younger
Okay.
generation, increasingly, that's not a draw. That's not an appeal to them. So I,
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't I don't honestly know what that looks like. I do agree with you though. We've lost a lot of that, and a lot of that used to be taught outside of the household has fallen away
Hmm.
at the cultural societal level. A lot of that instructional learning or that forced learning is no longer there, and we're kind of left on our own.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean,
Very
I
close.
I got to wrap this up, but I'll end with
Yeah.
this one interesting little anecdote. When I got my MBA, for the first year, we all took the same courses, and one of the courses was on basically communication, public speaking, etc. And the teacher said, they are literally trying to cut this from the curriculum. And this is legitimately the most important course you will ever take in the
There you go.
next 2 years.
Yep.
Because if you can't effectively communicate, you can't effectively lead. If you can't be the CEO talking at a Fortune 500 investor call, at the quarterly earnings conference
Mhm.
call, like if you can't communicate to the people that you're leading, that you're managing, if you can't communicate to your manager, like this is all everything hinges on this. You can know the best spreadsheets, but if you are not able to socially interact with people productively, communicate your message effectively, and have that social skill in your back pocket, your chances of rising to whatever level of business success that you define are greatly reduced. And I was kind of like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And I got to the end of the degree and was like, she was 100% correct.
Uh,
100% correct.
and now we're at a point to what you kind of brought up throughout this conversation is it's not even just about climbing a ladder.
Yeah.
It's just in the ability of being able to communicate with another human being.
Well,
And
to
and
be
what
happier, to be
it,
happier.
the joy that comes out of that, right? It's
Yeah.
like I'm gonna. Before you go, I gotta mention this because this was a profound thing for me about 3 months ago.
Okay.
So part of my studies at Substack and whatever, I've gone back to like ancient documents like the Bible.
Mm.
Unbelievable to me what I found there. But in Genesis 2:18, this is like 2,000 years ago. It says, "You are not to be alone. Man is not to be alone." So this is like 3 months ago. This is being presented to me. I've never seen it before, like that I could ever remember. Part of the reason I haven't seen it before is because after the semicolon, this in the same verse, it says, "So I will make you a helper." We
Mm.
all see, "I will make you a helper." We know the Adam and Eve story, right? But here we've got this ancient document, 2,000 years old, that there's not too many people that don't know what a Bible is. Maybe not read it, but know what it is. And it says it right there. Like, I was blown away, Scott. Like, that's okay. So in 2025, this is not new.
No,
We're just,
no.
I think, to your combined perfect storm almost, right? We have technology, we have, I'll call it housing, we have the pandemic, we have all we'll even look at our leadership going on, right? And just the confusion that is continually, and it's not just in particular countries, I think it's global.
Mm.
And you're kind of going like, okay, so what do we got to do? That's why I said, like, we got to pick the phone up. So anyway, I know you got to go. Any other closing things that you would like to, like, one thing that pops out that you think would help? I'm going to say in particularly men here, but people in general, from what you've gone through your reading and recent experiences,
Mm.
that you say, what to do?
I say this as someone who is not an expert in any way, shape, or form,
That might
but
be a benefit.
maybe. I'll give a personal anecdote, which is in April, about a month ago, I took a trip with my wife. We went out of town for a long weekend, and I discovered the book "Build the Life That You Want" on that trip early on, and I dove into it and began reading it. I think I finished half of it maybe in the first night we were there. And the rest of the trip, I made an intentional effort, no matter who I was interacting with. So we're talking bellhop at the hotel, valet driver, service person at a restaurant, person I bump into at the street. I'm actively trying to make a connection with them that goes beyond, hey, hi, thank you, appreciate that, excuse me. Commenting about some aspect. Love the hair, love the shoes, love your energy. And we did this. It's happened a week ago. My wife and I were out to dinner with
Oh,
friends.
wow.
The server came up and was just like he was like, I don't know, exuding happiness. I don't know if he was faking it. I don't know if it was intentional, but I literally turned to him and like, dude, I love your energy. Like, this is awesome. I can already tell this is going to be a great night. He literally teared up and he's like, oh my God, thank you. Like it's like it takes so little to make an impact on
You got
someone
it.
else's life. And that becomes really addictive. Like when you see how easy it is to make someone else feel better, you feel better.
Oh,
And then you
yeah.
realize, oh man, this isn't that hard. And then it becomes a challenge, the next person. And it doesn't always work. It does not always
No.
work. But it's like, it's kind of like golf. Well, I didn't hit a hole in one this time, but I'll try again. Oh, there's the hole in one. So I would say for me, that really helped me reframe interactions that I have with people that I would normally be very superficial with. And it's like, there's a real person there who's super interesting and has a story to tell. Or maybe he's having a bad day, but they're hiding it, right? And wouldn't it be nice if I was having a bad day, you popped in, some stranger complimented me,
Yep.
made me feel good, made me feel seen, and in a way that wasn't defined by our transactional context.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
You got it. Scott.
That's your homework, Doug. I can't wait to talk to you again and see where you are with that.
Well, all I can say is that's beautiful sentiment, Data. Scott has got to go, so we got to wrap this up. Thank you for joining us on Better Than Not today. This has been a great episode, Scott. We are going to get booked again, long before another 40 episodes go by. This is such an interesting topic, but thanks very much for sharing your kind of intimate thinking and what's going on with your world. So I thank you that, and hope you'll tune in to Better Than Not again. You'll never know where we're going to go and talk.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much, Tom.
Scott.
Thank you.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.